Yeah, we're going to talk this morning, going through Psalm 23, The Lord is my shepherd. I guess I'm going to title this Yahweh My Shepherd. I found that there is a wealth of divine understanding in the metaphors that God uses to describe himself. He calls himself, in certain places, he calls himself a father, he calls himself a mother, he calls himself a vine keeper, a potter. And we really need these metaphors because God as he is unknowable to us. He's so transcendent and so utterly unlike us in every way that we cannot know him unless he condescends to us. Unless he takes who he is and relates it in some way with something we can understand, he's unknowable to us. And when he does show up in a way that is very true to his nature, human beings basically fall apart. So you read stories of when God, already he's condescending way down to our level, but in some way he's revealing his glory and his majesty, and human beings cannot handle him. Even holy, holy men. Right? You see men like Daniel or Ezekiel or Isaiah, the Apostle John. When God shows up in his glory, they're basically like dead men. If God doesn't withdraw from them, they're going to die. His presence is we can't stand it. We can't stand his presence. So when God shows up to Daniel, he collapses and he has no strength left in him. He's almost begging that this holy being would leave him so that he can just survive. Ezekiel, the same way. God shows up in fire and all of the oxygen is sucked out of the atmosphere and he's gasping and panting for breath. He's not going to live. John falls at his feet as though he's dead. When Isaiah is ushered into God's presence, just the sight of God's holiness shattered Isaiah emotionally. Crushed him. Just seeing him crushed Isaiah. So, it's good that God gives us metaphors to understand him because he's not a bigger version of us. You can't take who you are and project it somehow even if you were able to grasp infinity, he's not like us. And so we need metaphors like this. We need him to come down. I'm not talking about us dumbing God down. I'm talking about him adapting himself to the puniness of our understanding, so that somehow we can see something that's familiar to us and understand something of the reality of who God really is. And if we give these metaphors loving attention, if we give them reverence and love and worship, if we worship God over things like this, we'll start to begin to get something about what he's like. I was thinking about how God calls himself a father. And that's given me some help in my life because I've watched a father look at his child who's beginning to walk. And something about the delight in that father's face tells me something about the heart of God. Because that child, if we're just measuring the child in terms of how good of a walker are you, it's like, fail. You are pathetic. If that's really what we're looking at is how good are you at this skill? You're pathetic. But in terms of a father looking at a son or a daughter, It's not pathetic. It's pure joy, bliss, inexpressible pleasure. And that helped me to learn something about the heart of God, because at the beginning of our Christian walk, guess what we are? Pathetic in terms of actual righteousness. But that's not how God looks at us. When he sees a child beginning to walk for the first time and takes wobbly, awkward, falling steps forward toward him, he doesn't look at us like we look at ourselves. When God calls himself a mother, I've thought about how a mother breastfeeds her baby. And it tells me something about the heart of God, because this is not just about giving the child a meal. It's about far more than that. It's about a person, a woman, who loves that child so desperately that she will give of her own life so that that child will live. She holds the baby close to her heart. It's about intimacy. It's about nurture. It's an experience of love. It's not just about give this child. I mean, you could just give the kid a bottle. You know what I mean? It's about more than that. And it tells me something about the heart of God, that he wants not just to help us to live, but he wants intimacy, he wants nearness, he wants closeness. Okay? And so when I look at Psalm 23 and I see that God is a shepherd, this is telling me, it's not just, we need to look closely. This is one of the most beloved portraits of God as he is. And you know, when God calls himself a shepherd, what that tells me is that before time began, he said, I am going to design the ideal of a shepherd. I am going to make this kind of person an analogy of what I'm really like. And when you're able to see a good shepherd, it's okay, it's imperfect because we're evil, right? That's what Jesus said. If you're evil, and you can give good gifts, how much more your heavenly Father? So, okay, an ideal shepherd, man, he's still an evil person, but he's a reflection of who God is in perfection. That rhymed. That was great. Wow. Okay. I didn't even plan that. Okay, so if God is calling himself a shepherd, what's a shepherd like? A good shepherd pays constant attention to his flock. Constant attention. He has one goal in life. A shepherd has one goal. It's a full-time job, and he's got one goal. I will give everything I am and everything I have to make sure that this flock is taken care of and provided for and protected and made and flourish. I make sure that they flourish as a flock. That's my one goal in life. He is zealous. A good shepherd is zealous in his protection of the flock. You get a lion or a bear or a wolf, and woe to that animal if he tries to take one of those sheep. Because that shepherd is going to put himself in harm's way, and he's going to do everything he can to make sure that no one is harmed. If anyone is going to come to harm, it's going to be him, the shepherd. A good shepherd, if even one of the sheep strays, he'll gather the rest of them, he'll put them in a safe place, and he'll he'll go searching and seeking for that lost sheep. He'll go into dangerous and unhospitable terrain, especially you're talking about the Judean wilderness. He's going to go out and find that sheep, who, by the way, is lost because of his own folly. Right? Regularly, he will examine every single sheep to make sure that they don't have bad skin conditions developing. I mean, sheep are we'll talk about sheep in a little bit. He regularly examines every single one of them to make sure that they're not getting sick, they're not having skin conditions. He knows exactly what they need, exactly. He's an expert at what they need, and he's determined to give it to them. He patiently trains them to know his voice, not somebody else's voice. He will patiently train them so that they know his voice and only follow his voice. He's always, always, always with them. He will never, never leave them to fend for themselves. Okay, so in other words, a shepherd loves his sheep. It's just, that's really what, you look at a shepherd and you see a person doing something like that, and what it means is that he loves them. It's authentic, genuine, self-sacrificing love. And this is Yahweh. This is a picture of what God is actually like. Okay, now, God's a shepherd, which means we are sheep, right? Okay, we're not the ducks on his pond, and we're not, whatever, the rabbits of his field, all right? We're the sheep of his pasture, which means that sheep is also an analogy of us. So let's take a look at sheep to understand what we're like, shall we? Okay, sheep have 0 defenses. 0. Okay? Against predators, they're done for. You got no defenses. If you're a sheep, you're vulnerable to all kinds of diseases. I mean, I remember one time somebody telling me all the different kinds of things that can happen to a sheep, and it's just like, golly, this is just horrible. Sheep tend to wander. They just wander aimlessly. I mean, they will wander into the most dangerous terrain, and they're clueless. They follow other people, or they follow other sheep. So you got one sheep. I remember this hilarious story. Well, hilarious to me because I wasn't the shepherd, but one sheep, here they go, all in a line, and one sheep goes off a cliff, and 1,500 sheep went off the cliff after it. Just a giant pile of sheep at the bottom of the ravine. They all just follow each other. He's going that way, I'm going that way. They can't find food for themselves. They have no clue how to find good pasture. They have no clue how to find good water sources. They'll drink from contaminated water sources and develop diseases and dehydration. They'll overgraze. They will find a hillside and they will eat the grass out by the roots until there's nothing left but dirt. They have no ability to detect storms. Like some animals can detect when a storm's coming in. They find shelter. Sheep, out of it. No idea. They can't sense changes in barometric pressure. They have 0 clue about what's about to happen to them. And they can't find shelter. Okay, so in other words, if you leave a sheep to himself, he's doomed. He's doomed. I mean, he'll live for some period of time, but he's going to be miserable, he's going to be sick, and eventually he's just going to die. You get where we're going? Okay, which means that the most important thing that a sheep can do, the determining factor in everything about that sheep, the quality of his life and the longevity of his life, is dependent on one thing: having a shepherd. Okay? Which means the most important thing that you can do in your life, the main goal of your entire life should be one thing: make sure that you really belong to God. Make sure you belong to him and make sure you stay with him. Because without him, without him we're weak, we're vulnerable, we're defenseless, we're lost. Jesus came, and it said Jesus came and he saw the crowds, that they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. That's just, without a shepherd, that's all we will ever be, harassed and helpless. So let's read Psalm 23 in that light. Think about the contrast of what I was just saying, of a sheep without a shepherd. And now let's read Psalm 23 in light of this man David, who said, "The Lord is my shepherd." The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. David knew what a shepherd was like because he had been one for many years. So when he thinks about God being his shepherd, this is a reality for him, right? I mean, he's saying that God is my owner, he's my manager, he's my protector, he's my provider, he's my guide, he's my keeper. The Lord is my shepherd. You know, we already talked about how a shepherd, I listed a number of things that a shepherd is, but I think there's something also deeper here, which it means that the shepherd owns the sheep. I'm owned by God. It's not just that he does things for me, it's that I'm his possession. And, okay, when it comes to a shepherd and sheep, the sheep they don't have any decision-making power, right? Like, who's my shepherd? They can't choose. But when it comes to humans, we will never be Yahweh's sheep without our decision. It's different in that way, right? Like, we have to make a choice for God to be my shepherd. That's what I think John 1, I can't remember one of the verses in John 1. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, who made the choice to receive him, he gave them the right to become children of God. That's the dynamic. When you choose, God gives you the right to become one of his sheep. And so David is acknowledging, I am owned by Yahweh. So that means that if a shepherd is a guide, I own Yahweh as my guide. Right? I'm not guiding myself anymore. I'm not just making my own decisions in life. He is my guide. And I'm not getting somebody else to guide me. Yahweh is my guide. Okay, so if a shepherd is a protector, then he's saying, Yahweh is my protector. I don't protect myself anymore. I don't have the right. I belong to him. Right? Okay, so David, this is not a theological platitude for David. This is not like a nice little poem that he just, I think this sounds good. And, if we ever go to a funeral, it'd be nice to say this. We say these words, we recite these words in church, we recite them at funerals, it's one of the most well-known psalms there is, but how many people are really saying, I am owned by Yahweh? How many times is it sort of like what Pastor Steve was saying? What we want is the benefit. We want, oh yes, he'll make me lie down in green pastures and lead me beside still waters and do all these things for me, but as far as who's the master of my life, I'm in control. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. The gate into the blessings of Psalm 23 begins with one thing: I own him as my shepherd. Without the ownership, you don't get any of the benefits. Without the surrender, without the submission, you don't get the benefits. You can see them from afar, but you won't get them. Because Yahweh only shepherds those who are in his flock. You know, like, he actually has, and this is what I love about him, and this is what Pastor Ed was bringing out. The only, you know, like, I don't know what it sounds like to you to say that I am going to let God control me. I don't know what it sounds like if I say to you, I'm going to let God own me. I'm going to let him rule me. There's for a lot of people, there's a lot of baggage with that. Whoa, I don't know about that. But that's because you don't know his goodness. Because God does not use his power the way men use their power. He doesn't use his authority the way men use their authority. What we know are men who are corrupt, they're power hungry, they're looking to exploit the people that they rule over. That's not Yahweh. When God is ruling and reigning over a person's life, he does it for one purpose, to bring about the most amount of blessing possible for them. He has real power and real authority to actually bring you under his influence and hold you under his sway, but for one purpose, so that you flourish. That's why he does it. That's why he wields his authority. Because look at what David is saying. Is there anything about what David is saying in this psalm that you wouldn't want for yourself? Do you want to be under the dominion of someone who can bring you to the place where you say, I need nothing? I am so satisfied. Do you want to be under the dominion of someone who gently leads you into green pastures and still waters, who restores your soul, who shows you how to live a righteous life, who can make you fearless? Don't you want somebody like that in your life? Who you can walk into the valley of the shadow of death and say, I have no fear. I don't know, I kind of want it. Sounds good to me. And it comes through allowing him to be your owner. It comes through submission and surrender. When you surrender to God, you get all of these benefits. When we reject his authority, when we say, I'm my own protector, I'm my own guide, I'm my own provider, when all we're doing in that moment is we're stepping out from under his authority. We're just saying, I'm in charge. And once you do that, once you make the choice to step outside of the authority of God, all that's left is the authority of evil. And you will know the power of evil because it will control you. You'll understand it. You'll understand what it is like to be dominated by sinful thinking and sinful attitudes and sinful feelings. You'll know it because it'll be your experience. If we reject God's authority, that's what we're just making the choice. Okay, I don't want your rule, God. This is not what we say, right? None of us said that. But that's really what the Bible is presenting to us. If we reject his authority, we just say, okay, then evil take a hold of me. We've all been there. So those are the two paths before us. And I'm not saying any of that to it's not, what am I saying? I'm just saying that to make the contrast very real. Do you want to be owned by a being who can do this in your life? It's sort of the path that's before us all. Do we really want his ownership? So what I want to do for the rest of the message, I've got 3 points. There's way too much to cover in this whole psalm. I just want to try to dive a little bit deeper into 3 things that you can expect from God if you'll surrender to him. 3 things that he will do for you. All right, the first thing, if you will submit to his leadership, the first thing that you are going to be able to say is, I have all that I need. I have all that I need. Let's look at verse 1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. When I was reading this, two things stuck out to me. One is that Yahweh, in his heart, is completely and utterly devoted to making sure that we have everything we need. He's personally devoted to making sure that all of your needs are taken care of. We're not completely sure when David wrote these words. Most commentators assume that it was at the later end of his life. And so this is not going to happen all at one time. It's not like you come down to an altar and you make a surrender and then everything is just like amazing from that point onward. This is the testimony of a lifetime, that over the span of your life, as you commit your will to him and you submit to him, you are going to be able to say with absolute sincerity, the Lord has been my shepherd, and I have had all I need, and I will always have all that I need because of him. That will be your sincere testimony. And the other thing that struck me is that what we're really talking about here is contentment. This is about contentment, because I was just thinking, I think it's a legitimate miracle when God can get a person to the place where they say with sincerity, I have everything I need and I will have everything I need, right? Because are we like that by nature? No, never. Right? And not only that, but not just like people in general, but 21st century America to get us as 21st century Americans to say that because Yahweh is my shepherd, I have everything I need. That is like a miracle exponential. For one, we've totally conflated need with desire. And that's a problem. Because there are tons of things that we tell ourselves, I need this, and guess what? We don't. Not a need. And I was trying to come up with some examples. We say this. We don't even think about what we're saying. Oh, I need another TV for my downstairs basement. That's not a need. I need a smartwatch. No, you don't. No. Or I need a second car. These are not needs. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that they're wrong to have any of those things. I'm just saying they're not needs. Or we also have legitimate needs, and we tell ourselves we need way more of those things than we actually do. So, okay, we do need food, right? We do. But we don't need as much as we have here. It's not needed. We need shelter, right? It's a real need. You're not going to survive if you just well, at least I won't. Certainly not. No way. So I need shelter, but it's not like I need this huge house with a beautiful lawn and all of these gadgets and all these toys and the latest design. I don't need any of that. I just need a place that's going to protect me and keep me alive. Okay, I need transportation, but I don't need The car, it's got heated seats, and it's got the backup camera, it's got driver seat profile settings, and it's got the little screens that come down for the kids. We don't need any of this. We just need something that gets us from point A to point B. Okay, and again, I'm not saying that any of those things are wrong. Why is it that God wants us to get to the place where we can say, I have everything we need, I have everything I need? The issue is contentment. It's not wrong to have things, but it's wrong to be driven by lust. It is wrong to be discontent. It's a sin. Because discontent leads to bitterness, which leads to idolatry, which leads to all kind of sin, horrible sins. It is extremely wrong to be discontent. It's bad for us. It's a sin against God. And he has to get us to the place where we can say, I have everything I need. James, there are a number of scriptures that explain why discontentment and lust are so dangerous. I've thought of one, James 3, 1 through 3. It says, James 4, 1 through 3. What causes quarrels? Listen to this. What causes quarrels? And what causes fights among you? Anybody ever been in a fight? Anybody ever been in a quarrel? I'm not talking about a fist fight. I'm just talking about like a fight. You ever been in one? Okay, what causes that? Here's what causes it. Your passions are at war within you. You want something and you don't have it. And so you murder. He's not talking about physical murder. He's just talking about fighting and quarreling. You covet and you cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. That's the issue. What causes all of our disagreements, what causes strife in the home, what causes families to break apart is that people want something and they're not getting it. And so they tear themselves and each other apart. That sounds like a problem, doesn't it? In 2 Peter, he said that all of the corruption that's in the world is because of sinful desire. It's because of lust. It's because of what we're talking about. Discontentment and lust. I'm not talking about sexual lust. I'm just talking about I want something, I want it, I want it, I want it. All of the corruption that's in the world, from some of the most heinous sins you can think of, it all came in through that one little doorway. I want. So it's definitely very important. And I wouldn't even just say important. One of the best things God could ever do for you is help you learn contentment. It's the greatest gift he could ever give you almost. Is just I don't want anything. I'm satisfied. Now, for me, I don't know where I'm at in it. I know I'm a lot more content than I used to be. It's a hard struggle. It does not happen without a fight, a real blood and sweat fight. Because your passions are at war within you, and you have to subdue them. So, gratitude. Who loves their gratitude list? Actually, gratitude list? I'm not so sure about that. Anybody feel a little bit weird about the gratitude list? Okay. Do it. Hear me? Because the goal is to get to this place. That's the goal. Gratitude, no complaining. You know, boy, that's a hard one. But if you can restrain yourself from complaining, you start to give gratitude for what you don't have, and you start to give gratitude for the things you do have that you don't want. You work at that for the next week. I'm going to be grateful for the things that I don't have, and I'm going to be grateful for the things I do have that I don't want. That means your roommate and your job and your schedule and your chore. Start being grateful for that stuff. If you're going to be his sheep, you have to be grateful. His sheep are not ungrateful. At least he's devoted to making sure that we're not ungrateful. Okay, I got to move on. Led in paths of righteousness is the second thing that you're going to be able to say. You're going to be able to say, he has led me in paths of righteousness. That's in the second verse. And what is really being described here is that you're actually being led into a life where you walk with God. Because walking or path is lifestyle. That means lifestyle. It means the fixed pattern of my life. And guess what? God is righteous. He doesn't walk on unrighteous paths. He won't touch it. The only pathway that God is going to walk on is a path of righteousness. And so if you want to walk with God, you got to get on the path of righteousness. It's not on him to adapt himself to your lifestyle. You got to adapt yourself to his. That's how it is for all of us. If we want to walk with God, it's all on us. And, I think probably in like a human relationship, it's kind of like, let's meet in the middle. Sorry, God doesn't meet in the middle. He trains you to be where he's at. And by the way, he already came down to where you were so that you could be where he is. We have to learn as a pattern of life to live righteously. It has to happen. That's what it means to submit to his ownership, is a determination and a dedication over the long haul. I will learn to live a righteous life. There is no, I claim God as my king and I'm okay staying how I am. That's hypocrisy. It's a complete decision. I own him, and I am going to become like him by his help. Now, that's a problem. The fact that we have to live a righteous life is a problem, because guess what? We're not righteous. We're sinners. And there's something about us that is so deeply entrenched that no matter how much God explains how to be righteous, our sinful natures say, not going to happen, I'm not following you. That's what the sin nature is. The sin nature is just it's just rebellion. That's what the flesh is. It's just rebellion, right? So God says, I want you to do this, and we say, oh, by the way, I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to figure out a bunch of ways to break your commandments. That's what the sinful nature is. So, it's a problem for us because God, this is the other thing, in terms of living a righteous life, God is not going to judge us based on our intentions. You stand before God, he's not going to ask you, did you want to live a righteous life? It's not the question. He's not going to ask you, did you go to church? He's not going to ask you, how much did you know about doctrine? He's going to look at one thing. Were you righteous? Were you righteous in your thoughts? Were you righteous in your motives? Were you righteous in your feelings? Were you righteous in your interactions? Were you righteous in your actions? He's going to examine your life to see, were they righteous? Now, I know that, does that sound heretical to anybody? Has anybody been brought up well, that's not what I was taught? I've had people say, that's not what I was taught. Okay, well, that's what the Bible teaches. So I want to show you one scripture. And this might sound like bad news, but it's good news. Romans 2:6. God will render to each one according to his works. To those who by patience in well-doing seek for glory and honor and immortality, to those he will give eternal life. But for those who are self-seeking and who do not obey the truth but obey unrighteousness, there will be wrath and fury. Okay, so essentially, here's the point. God gives eternal life to people who have been made righteous. That's who get it. There's no benefit. We don't get any benefit spiritually if our lives are unrighteous. We have to be made righteous. And when I came to Pure Life, man, was that incredibly clear to me. The Lord, I don't know how he did it, but it was just so obvious to me. I cannot be in fellowship with God because he's righteous and I am not. There is no fellowship between light and dark. My life is dark. He is light. There's no possibility of us being in fellowship at this moment. If I'm going to have fellowship with God, I have to become like him. It has to happen. And, that sent me into a tailspin. And what I found out very quickly was that I had no idea how to be righteous. I didn't have a clue. I could read the Bible, and I could follow the rules in the program, and I could do outward things, but in terms of actually being righteous, I had zero idea. Because the more I tried, the more God pointed his searchlight at my heart and said, here's your problem. You've got impure motives. You've got impure thoughts. These things are coming from an impure will. What really needs to change is the core of your being, not your actions. Something incredibly deep has to happen in your heart. And I was like, I don't even know. How do you get down in there that deep? How am I going to get to the core of my being and change myself? I had no idea. And the more I tried, the less I seemed able to do any of this. I felt like Paul. I know by experience that nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh. For I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. And that's the key. You have to be able to carry out what is right in order to be with God. And I didn't know how to do that. And so that just became a very deep struggle for me. And here's all I'm going to say about this third point. You know what that showed me? I need a shepherd. I need a shepherd because I don't know how to do this. I'm helpless in this way. What I need is a righteous person to actually come alongside of me and train me. I need someone who knows how to do it because I don't. And guess what? Jesus does. Jesus knows how to walk in a righteous way. He knows how to have a pure heart. He knows how to have a pure mind. And if he will train me, if I will submit myself to his ownership and his leadership, he will train me. Not just by information, but he'll come inside of me and give me of his own spirit so that I can become a righteous person. Okay, point number 3. Comforted by his rod and staff. This is the third thing that if you'll submit to his ownership, you're going to be able to say that you've been comforted by his rod and his staff. Shepherds, they know exactly what sheep need. They're the experts, right? So, in the shepherd and sheep relationship, which of them knows which way to go? The shepherd, right? Okay. Which of them knows, in this situation, when we've got this health problem, which of them is the one who knows what to do about it? The shepherd. Okay? Now the sheep, us, because we're sheep, guess what we do? We think we know. We think we know. We think we know which way to go. We think we know what to do. We've got complex situations. I can figure this out. We think we know. You know what that is? It's just leaning to your own understanding. It's just folly. He's telling us, hey, guess what? You're a sheep. You don't know anything. You need me. Okay, but as sheep, guess what we do? we just plunge ahead. I got this. I'm good. Got it. I see this problem in my life. I can solve it. This is what we do. We just make our own decisions. We just plunge ahead. And the shepherd, thankfully, has some tools to deal with that. The fact that you think you know, the fact that you think you can handle it, the fact that you think you can make decisions, the shepherd has tools to deal with that. Because you don't know, and you don't know how to figure it out, and you can't handle it, but you think you can. So the shepherd has a staff. It's got a hook on it. You know, you've seen the big one with the hook. And basically, if a sheep wants to go somewhere where the shepherd is like, no, you shouldn't go there, he just hooks it around the leg. And, you know, the sheep, I want to go this way. And the shepherd's like, no, you're not going that way. Or if he's wandering, he just goes after it, and he hooks it, and he just basically, I think, I'm not a shepherd, but drags it back. I don't know how it works. But he brings it back. He uses it, I think, to guide. I've read this stuff, but I've never seen it in action, but he uses it as a guide. I want you to go this way, and he can use his staff along those lines. The rod, I guess, is like it's a bit like a club. It's got a knob on one end, and then it's got a handle on this end. And apparently a shepherd, if he sees a sheep about to go somewhere, like the sheep is a distance off, and he sees that he's about to like do something stupid, he can just throw it with incredible accuracy and bam, hit that sheep. You know, and that's painful, and the sheep's like, ugh, and he gets back where he's supposed to be. Okay, so the point is, all of the functions of the rod and the staff, they're all uncomfortable in the moment. They're all uncomfortable in the moment, but they're aimed at something. I have to restrain your will. Because your will is leading you astray, and I have to deal with it. I have to deal with your will until I get it into the place where you stay with me. It's all unpleasant in the moment. But we're not submitting ourselves to somebody who, he's good. He's infinitely good. Okay, so when he looks at you, instantaneously, he sees everything about you. He knows every thought. He knows every motive. He knows every inclination. He knows your preferences. He knows your weaknesses. He knows your strengths. He instantly knows everything about you. And he sees your entire life in one moment, everything that happened to you, what shaped you, what hurt you, what helped you, and what he wants you to be, and what it's going to take to get you there. He sees it all instantly. And he's infinitely loving. He will do whatever it takes to help you become the kind of person that he's planned for you to be, the kind of fruit that he wants you to bear. Guys, I'm telling you, he did not bring you here to help you with your sexual sin. I mean, he did, and he will do that, but he has a plan for you. He has works for you to do that were prepared before the foundation of the earth. He looked at your life and he said, this is what I want them to do. I want them to be fruitful. I want them to multiply. I want them to be a blessing for my kingdom. And then I want to bring them into eternity while they're enjoy that for the rest of eternity. That's his goal for you. And he knows what it's going to take to get you to that goal. And he loves you enough to do it. To do it. And he's powerful. He's infinitely powerful. This is amazing to me. I don't know how sovereignty works, okay? I don't understand it. But here's what I know. Somehow, without violating man's free will, he can orchestrate everything in the world. People, situations, he can open doors, he can close doors, he can present opportunities, he can take opportunities away, and it's all for one purpose, to get you to where he wants you to be. And the only thing, this is where the rod and the staff comes in, the only thing that's standing in between you and the fulfillment of his will is your self-life. Your self-life, your own desires, your own will, your own preferences. I'm saying you, us. This is what stands in between us and the fulfillment of God's will. It's our folly, it's our short-sightedness, it's our rebellion, it's our own desires. And so God, when we submit ourselves to be his owner, he says, I'm going to use my tools to deal with those things in your life. I have to. I love you with real love. Unpleasant in the moment, but in the end, real comfort. Real comfort. Long-lasting, eternal comfort, right? And so he'll use things that are just, he'll use sickness, he'll use disappointments, he'll put things in front of you that you really want, and you'll pursue them, and when you're just about to get it, he'll let it fall apart. Now, I know that hurts. I have been there, and it's excruciating, but he does it for a purpose because he loves us. He's trying to deal with our self-life, the self-life that just like the reason we're here, right? Because of our self-life. That's what he's trying to deal with. Interpersonal conflict, it's your roommate, it's your job. It's everything that is difficult is used in the hands of a loving God to break down your self-life so that what can be in the place of it is the life of God. That's what he's doing. And I know that it's hard and I know that it hurts. But it's good because he's good. Because, I don't know this by perfect experience. I'm not saying that my will has been completely conformed to God's will, but I do know this. Every single time my will has come into conformity with his will, it is wonderful. It's wonderful. Even when it's hard, it's wonderful. You know why? Because there's peace. That's why. Because when you're in the center of his will, there's peace. When you're not, it's turmoil and it's chaos and confusion. And even when you're getting what you want, it's misery. Being conformed to God's will is where we're going to find lasting peace. And so he uses his rod and staff to actually bring real comfort to us. And that's what you're going to be able to say. If you submit to his ownership and you walk with him over the long haul, you're going to be able to say, his rod and his staff have comforted me. And all of these other things as well. So I'm just going to close in prayer and let somebody else decide what to do. Lord, again, I thank you. I thank you for each one of these men. Lord, and I thank you for bringing them here to put yourself in front of them and to invite them, to invite all of us to submit to you, Lord, to take you as our shepherd. I thank you that your heart is good, and I just pray that you'd make these things very real to people in the coming days. In Jesus' name, amen.